Southern Patagonia was a fierce place when Magellan first discovered it in 1520. The channel was savagely turbulent. The Arctic blasts and huge waves buffeted the galleons as they approached the shore. The weather was cold and inhospitable. Wild storms, mountainous tides, and tumultuous seas threatened the ship's very survival. Observing the bleak landscape, the crew had no idea what fearful creatures stalked around the interior. This destitute region at the extreme edge of the planet stirred their most hideous imaginings. Anything, natural or unnatural, might be hidden among the trees. Savage beasts, barbarians, demons, or devils. They had no idea, but its very hostility gave them pause. Once on shore, they found enormous footprints. With great courage, they searched for what or who had left them. Then they spied moving forms lurking in the shadows and imagined the worst. Enormous alien beings. Who else could have left such massive footprints? According to Antonio Pagatelli, the journalist who accompanied Magellan and wrote a book called A Narrative Account of the First Circumnavigation, the natives of this bleak land were so tall that the tallest of us only came up to their waists. Perhaps they looked huge to the frightened crew, but subsequent explorers found that the indigenous people of this region were tall compared to Europeans, but they were not giants. The rocky, menacing coastline and the harsh weather conditions turned out to be more dangerous than the human inhabitants residing there. The rough seas doomed many a boat that approached that rugged shore, and Magellan himself lost one of his ships in the tumultuous waters off the coast of Argentina. The name Patagonia may have arisen from the Spanish word pata, meaning foot, the tracks as described by Magellan's crew. But more likely it was named for a contemporary novel called Prima Leon, some of whose characters belonged to a primitive race called Patagonians. The Tehuelche, the natives that Magellan encountered, were nomads who spent most of their time scrounging for food. They left no wonderful hidden cities, gold-covered buildings, exquisite pottery, or statues. There are cave drawings that mark their cultural heritage, but that is all. They lived a meager existence off the sparse land. For hundreds of years, Patagonia remained virtually uninhabited except for the indigenous tribes. Patagonia is 400,000 square miles, or about the size of California plus Texas. In 1900, there were only 1 million inhabitants there. Today, there are about 2 million, while 66.5 million people live in Texas and California combined. In Patagonia, there was no great wealth, no rich lands to cultivate, no tranquil harbors for establishing towns, no meek natives to enslave. European explorers repeatedly tried to establish colonies there, but failed because of the region's scarce resources. The colonists came and went, many dying of malnutrition or exposure. Today, Patagonia is a haven for tourists seeking the wonders of nature. It is one of the Earth's most beautiful and peaceful spots. Here, towns and villages are separated by mountains, inlets, channels, tundras, steppes, pampas, and miles of empty space. The city of Ushuaia, the residents are proud to tell you, is the southernmost city on the planet. It is one of the largest and most important towns in southern Patagonia, with a population of around 60,000. It is also very remote, 2,000 mostly unpopulated miles from Buenos Aires. The name Ushuaia derives from the native Yamana language and means bay overlooking the east. Magellan skirted this place as he made his way from the South Atlantic to the South Pacific Oceans so many years ago. Ushuaia was first established as a base for missionaries, but when the last of the indigenous people died, it became a penal colony. The most desperate of criminals were sent there, along with a few political prisoners. They hardly needed to be jailed since there was absolutely no place to escape to, even were they inclined to do so. They cut down trees, constructed buildings, and a railroad. The prison was open from 1896 until 1947, when Juan Perón closed it after hearing about the atrocities that went on there. The ancient railroad still operates, transporting tourists from Ushuaia to Tierra del Fuego National Park. The prison is now a museum, Museo Marino de Ushuaia. Its most interesting exhibit is the prison itself. The cells, the kitchens, the dining areas, the long empty hallways, and the bathrooms. The place is eerie and poignant, filled with the whispers of the many desperate prisoners who lived and died there. Tourists flock to Ushuaia to take one of the many cruises to Antarctica. In the harbor are many large ships awaiting passengers who want to go even further south than Ushuaia. The natural world around Ushuaia is its main tourist attraction. Ushuaia is on the archipelago of Tierra del Fuego, next to the Beagle Channel. This waterway is filled with birds that flock to the many uninhabited islets in the bay. The vista from a catamaran sailing across the channel is spectacular. It features snow-capped mountains, sparkling water, the town of Ushuaia in the distance, and seabirds soaring above the deep blue skies. If you are lucky, your boat will be followed by a flock of birds, or by orca whales, or a family of dolphins jumping playfully through the water. Small islands in the channel are covered virtually to capacity with wildlife. Cormorants, the color of penguins, laze on the rocks of the small islands. There are also many other kinds of birds, geese, gulls, albatross, terns, and ducks, being just a few of them. And there are small colonies of Magellana penguins. From time to time, a bird or two take flight, skimming masterfully over the water as they seek their dinners. Close to the birds are sea lions whose relaxation techniques humans would do well to emulate. On one of the islands is the symbol of Ushuaia, a stately red and white lighthouse whose signals direct the mariners safely into shore. Tierra del Fuego National Park is a wonder. There, nature is at her most abundant and generous. The park is filled with the sights of lakes, rocky snow-capped mountains and waterfalls crowned by clouds of water vapor. The trees in this area are endangered, however. In 1946, Argentina imported 50 beavers from Canada, hoping to start a fur trade to boost the local economy. The beavers did what beavers do. They started cutting down the trees and building dams that blocked the water and drowned the surrounding vegetation. In Canada, black bears and wolves keep their numbers in check. But here in Patagonia, there are no natural predators. The park and wildlife authorities in Chile and Argentina are trying to deal with this difficult issue of containing their numbers to save the forests. In the meantime, the beavers' impressive dams are an interesting tourist site. El Calafate is a small town with a population of around 22,000. It is the gateway to one of the most spectacular sites in Argentina, Las Glaciares National Park and the Perito Moreno Glacier. El Calafate is named after a little blueberry-like bush whose berries are edible. The local legend is that if you eat the blueberries before leaving El Calafate, you are destined to return. This town is situated on the largest lake in Argentina, Argentino Lake. El Calafate is an attractive town. The streets are clean and appealing. There are many parks and playgrounds. But the most impressive recreational area is a promenade around the lake, the home of much wildlife. An afternoon stroll provides you with glimpses of flamingos, black-necked swans, geese, albatross, and many other birds. Close to El Calafate is Las Glaciares National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This park is so exquisitely beautiful that viewing its resplendent panoramas, its stately mountains, its 25 glaciers, its rushing rivers and sparkling lakes, can produce a near mystical experience. In this park is one of the most famous glaciers in the world, Perito Moreno. This glacier can be called a river of ice because it constantly flows forward. Unlike most glaciers in the world, it is growing, not shrinking. Its slow movement is imperceptible to the human eye, but it actually advances about 2 meters per day. Perito Moreno is massive, covering an area of 100 square miles. Its face is about 3 miles across and 74 feet high. At its deepest point, it measures 2,297 feet. This glacier contains the world's largest reserve of fresh water. It is a giant wall of ice, imposing, powerful, and impenetrable. At regular intervals, Perito Moreno provides visitors with dramatic performances. To see the ice fall, to hear its thunderous sounds, and to watch huge fragments of ice skimming like schooners across the lake is breathtaking. Perito Moreno is part of one of the largest ice fields in the world, the southern Patagonian ice field, made up of 48 glaciers. It is 220 miles long and 30 miles wide and dates back to the time when this whole region was covered with ice. Puerto Natales, a town of around 20,000, was founded in 1911 on the mouth of the Ultima Esperanza Sound and the Signoret Channel. In 1557, Juan Ladriero, a navigator and explorer, was searching for a passage through the Straits of Magellan. He was frustrated. He kept encountering dead ends, roadblocks, and blind alleys. He knew that there was a way to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific because Magellan had already been successful. But Ladriero just couldn't find it. Consequently, he named the sound in the Straits of Magellan the Last Hope, Ultima Esperanza. But he would find it now or never. Eventually, he came to a large glacier that blocked his way. But he persisted in searching, although he was getting more and more despondent. Endurance finally paid off. Juan Ladriero found the route from the Atlantic to the Pacific and back. Magellan had previously navigated one way. Ladriero was the first person to succeed in going both ways. The name stuck, however, and it is still called Ultima Esperanza Sound, as well as Ultima Esperanza Province. The reason most tourists come to Puerto Natales is to visit one of the gems of Chile, Torres del Paine National Park, a UNESCO biosphere reserve. This park is infused with nature at its most enchanting. Water is everywhere in all its forms: fjords, glaciers, streams, rivers, lakes, waterfalls, cascades, and rapids. The park contains the third largest ice field on the planet, and the high mountains seem to spring right out of the lakes as they rise to embrace the sky. The most famous peaks are the dramatic towers, the Torres. Their rough shapes are like fingers pointing at the gods. Lady Florence Dixie, in 1880, one of the first Europeans to explore the area, called the peaks Cleopatra's Needles. Whatever you call them, they are majestic and can compete in beauty and stateliness with any monument of man or nature. There are 3 towers, central, south, and north. The largest is 9,450 feet high with sheer rock sides. They stand like symbols for the strength and durability of the earth. With all of its lakes, rivers, and mountains, Torres del Paine National Park provides an endless series of enchanting vistas, some as simple as forests that are affected by the severe climatic conditions and the wild winds that bend and bow the trees. There are trees felled by the severity of the climate lying on the forest's floor. Glacial rivers and streams rushing toward the Ultima Esperanza Channel. Hardy ground vegetation whose roots grip the rocks that protect them from the vicious winds. Mounds of ice broken off from the glaciers floating on the lakes. A glacier cuddled between 2 mountainous escarpments, and mountains so high that the summits seem to brush against the heavens, their peaks shrouded in cotton candy clouds. This is a splendid landscape that makes the individual feel small in comparison to its colossal beauty. Punta Arenas is a city that was once one of the most important in Chile. It was the hub of the sheep industry and a fuel stop for boats going from the east coast to the west coast of the United States before the construction of the Panama Canal. It is a place of fading grandeur, where there are many relics of its early prosperity. The town square is surrounded by 19th century mansions, whose owners have long since vanished. Founded in 1848 as a penal colony, it is now one of the largest cities in southern Patagonia, with a population of 127,000. It is situated on the Straits of Magellan, and it is the most southern continental city on the planet. Like Ushuaia, Puerto Arenas is one of the major ports for tourists going to Antarctica. Penguins are the main tourist attraction of Punta Arenas. On a small island in the Straits of Magellan is the Monumento Nacional Los Pingüinos. This is the summer home of 120,000 penguins, as well as other birds. They are called Magellanes penguins after Ferdinand Magellan, who in 1519 was the first European to observe them. On this island, tourists must walk on a single roped-off path. The penguins, however, can walk anywhere, in front of you, in back of you, or over your feet. They are very used to human visitors, and most pay no attention to the tourists gaping at them, photographing them, admiring their striking black and white coloration, and the mask-like markings on their faces. The birthing season is in the Patagonian summer, January and February. Holes dug into the sand are everywhere. These are the burrows that the shy birds build for mating and birthing. This is where the infants hide when their parents are out hunting for food. Before winter, the penguins migrate to a warmer climate, mostly to Peru or to Brazil. The penguins lay 2 eggs in their burrows that take 5 to 6 weeks to hatch. These penguins are very liberated. Moms and dads have equal responsibility for the chicks. Each may spend from 10 to 15 days looking for food, while the other tends to the babies. When dad returns, mom searches for food. In 60 or 70 days, the babies are grown and are able to gather food for themselves. Within a month of birth, the babies molt. Their color changes from a mottled gray to the black and white tuxedo of their parents. Nature has bestowed its riches on Patagonia. It is not only beautiful, but it is pristine. Being a very remote place, the environment is unspoiled by a profusion of tourists. 150,000 people per year visit Torres del Paine National Park, which is 935 square miles around. The government of Chile would like to increase that number to 300,000. By contrast, Machu Picchu is only 5 square miles around, but entertains 400,000 visitors per year. Many magnificent sites around the world are being degraded by the number of tourists visiting them. But Patagonia has a good chance of maintaining its immaculate perfection. Hopefully, the future will shine brightly on the pure elegance of this environment and allow it to retain its enchantment.